Hey everyone, this is Guillaume. You can call me G, and I'm joined today by Gaetan Gachet. And we're going to talk about marketing in sales and the new customer experience and how to create a great customer experience. And so, very quickly, I'm going to present myself. I'm Guillaume. I've been VP of Growth at multiple high growth B2B companies, including Segment, Drift. And I live in San Francisco. I was previously in Paris, France for other B2B startups. Gaetan, you want to present yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Gaetan. I'm the head of strategy at Algolia. I've been with Algolia for a little over 6 years. Was the second employee and the first one in sales. And so I've seen all the different motions of expanding, scaling a sales revenue organization alongside a marketing organization from 0 to almost 70 million.
70 million today. Wow, that's pretty impressive. That's crazy, from 0 to 70 million. So there's a lot of things going on right now. There's a lot of changes, and so you're leading the revenue org for a very large and successful B2B SaaS companies. My first question to you right now is, how do you forecast? Like, how do you plan the activities for your team in right now when things are just like so uncertain and moving so much?
Okay, how do you forecast? It's the $1 billion question. So there's different. If you
Let's call it a $70 million question.
Yeah, right. So if you talk about the forecast of the number of where you end, it's pretty typical. You look at the current pipeline that you have open. The read rates based on pipeline stages. Each pipeline stage corresponds to certain activities in sales. Like, for instance, you can't move from one stage to the next if you don't have those activities. So based on this, we're able just to give probability scores to closing. So that's how you forecast what you currently have open. Usually, you end up with a forecast that is under your target. So the next thing that you need to do after that is to bridge the gap. And right now, gap is my favorite word right now. And how do you do that is just by creating more pipeline. And how do you do that is by collaborating with your marketing team.
So we'll get right into that. Before we get into the weeds, I'd want to know so you're head of strategy. Could you just explain us what that means? Because that might not be a very common role.
Sure. So yeah, no, it's not common, especially at our stage. So today we're 350 employees, more or less, and the thing is, when I joined back in 2013, ever since I joined, we've been in hyper growth mode. So it sort of started very organically, and I guess Segment was the same, Drift was the same. Huge viral demand. So you sort of for the first few years, you sort of base your growth on this, and then at some point you realize that to keep the triple-digit growth numbers, you can't just rely on organic, and you need to start putting some structure in place and some new channels in place of acquisition. You need to increase your deal size, and there's a bunch of stuff that we did in I would say in the second half of the life of the company, starting 2016, 2017. And now what we want to do is, okay, now that we have that structure in place, we really want to understand how we can keep that pace. And you can keep that pace is by really focusing on the low-hanging fruit. So there's and where my function comes in is really dissect growth, understand what are the levers, what are the areas, what are the markets, the sub-markets where we have actually the lowest hanging fruit and where we have the most potential, and bet on them. And that helps you decide how where you allocate your engineering time. Because for instance, we can sell to media companies, we can sell to telcos, we can sell to banks if we want. You search for customer records in the bank, but we have product gaps there. And should we put engineering time on bridging those product gaps for the banks, or should we put them on gaps for the media? Yeah. So that's sort of like how I come in.
And so just to explain, do you have teams working for you to help you on the strategy, or do you control the sales org? Do you control the marketing org, or are those independent entities that you inform with where the company should be going?
Right. So it's absolutely not about controlling. So the thing that my idea behind this function was really to have the team as small as possible, and make it a mandate. Because my previous role, leading the revenue organization, I had 150, 200 employees.
Wow.
It can be tricky. So here, you want to be in a function that is very nimble, very agile. So we're a team of two, myself and Baptiste, who's an analyst and genius developer, the work that we do together is a lot about the data. And I've been doing this for a few months. So the very first step is data, and understanding, using our data to understand what we should focus on. And once you understand, once you get the data, then you work with the functions. For instance, this quarter we've launched 4 new plays around marketplace, really very, very focused stories. And we decided to do that based on the data, and then rolling this out, we work with the marketing function, with the PMM. So literally my team is the entire organization. So the idea is to not have a team and act as a silo.
I like what you're saying. I like how you're putting it.
Yeah, you can't act as a silo. Your team is the company, and you're trying to shift the direction of the ship. So you have to work very, very closely with all the functions.
Okay. So now let's shift to so you have a really good knowledge of the entire organization from the revenue org, but I'm sure you also know the marketing org really well. So let's take a step back and say so how do you or how do you think, or how does Algolia create a great customer experience? Where do you think you're really good, and what do you think you fail at in the customer experience? Or what, if we put it more positively, what do you think you have some
areas
levers
of improvement.
for improvement? Yeah, yeah, you know the words.
Okay, so customer experience, in my view, starts way before your customer. And especially in our world, and I guess I would love to hear your thoughts on this at segment. I would say, with us, maybe 60 or 80% of the sales process happens before talking to sales rep. And where does that happen? First off, the website, our documentation, this whole education piece, all of that. So we want to make sure that people don't need to talk to us, pretty much, and they can convince themselves. So the very first, so the website is key. There's another area that is key is once people sign up, when they get their hands on the product. And that's one area where actually I think we could do better, is that we've historically focused on just one persona. Very technical, the developer. So if you open an account on Algolia, you'll see can be quite technical. But over time, we've again complexified our personas and started going after C-levels, VPs who don't necessarily operate in technical functions. But for these folks, we haven't adapted the onboarding experience. So right now,
I'd love to talk about that, because that's something we talked about previously, you and I. And I think for all the founders or key people in B2B technical startups, SaaS products, I think there's this pretty common shift where you have a really good product at the start and you appeal to technical people. And most of the time the founders are technical too. There's a strong technical founding team. And so that's, you appeal to that first persona who's at the same time the user, the buyer, the champion. And I think that's how Algolia grew. It's through building a strong community, building a strong love within engineers, developers, right? But the ACV there is generally pretty low, at least when you start, right? And so you then want to start increasing the ACV, and as you increase the ACV, you get further and further away from the technical champion, and you go into the economic buyer. And the economic buyer now has much less understanding, might not have access to the product, or might not have any value getting the product. And that shift, that transition is a transition that is critical to succeed, and extremely challenging for all the companies that I've seen and I've been at. And I'm sure that's exactly what you're seeing.
Yeah, no, 100%. On that one, how do we adapt to that? Well, I think us, it's true for us. I don't know if that applies to folks who are watching this right now. But our core base is technical developers. So you always need to make sure that you still resonate, your message still resonate with these people, because they, even though initially there were the technical, the user, the buyer, and everything in one single person. Over time, these people became our internal mobilizers. So even though they were not the ones who would sign off or just sign the check, they were still the ones who would have a lot of weight inside the decision committee. So you got to make sure that you still talk to them and that you still resonate with them for
sure.
that one single deal. But there's also what we saw is, historically, is that these people are, it's free marketing. They're a first source of leads. Like they're the ones who spread the word out there about Algolia, and that viral aspect is also like a huge upside of that, our initial community. Then how did we adapt to the C-level and on audience? I think that's where you need to have a very strong sales organization. You need the marketing team needs to have collaterals for for folks like that. That's where we started to work, for instance, with Forrester, putting together total cost of ownership analysis and sort of things. That's one piece.
Yeah.
Another piece that is really key right now is when you sell to the enterprises, to have really good relationship with the SIs and like system integrators and folks like Capgemini, Accenture, because these guys they act as the as trustful partners for large companies. So they do recommendations. They would include a piece of technology in the blueprint, and then they push it to. So those are the people that the C-levels will listen to, them and the analysts. So that's pretty much how we're doing. I don't want to say we're doing that perfectly, but that's pretty much how we're approaching it right now.
So if I try to summarize a bit like what you said, and tell me if I'm painting it wrong, I think what's interesting is that the customer experience at the beginning, and then later on for part of your target audience, the customer experience goes to the product and creating a great product experience. But then there's a new population that you tag along where the customer experience no longer is the product. And you need to create other things, collateral and partnerships, and use social proof and other types of content that create a great customer experience, but that is no longer the product.
And new teams internally as well. So we started building our customer success organization late 2016, and I think that was too late. And the job, it is a very critical function, and we're at 15 million, something like that. So we started scaling that team in the 15-20 million mark. The function, the role of that team is really critical, because their job is really to make sure that we do execute on the business value prop of the deal that we sold. So for instance, when we sell to, I don't know, like a retailer, the KPIs that they expect to improve are always the same: conversion rate, basket size, and this sort of stuff. Once you close the deal, actually, this is just the start of the relationship, and that's the beauty of SaaS. The deal is not the initial land; it's the recurring thing. So you need to keep investing in the relationship, and having a really strong customer success engagement model is critical for the business side. And of course, you need the support function, the technical support function as well. But that's why we've invested as well in the post-sales organization pretty heavily, because again, that team, that organization has two main benefits. First off is they guarantee revenue. So they maximize LTV, lifetime value of the customer, because customers stay and don't churn. Number two is expansion. If you have a strong relationship with the client, then they expand. So same thing around the LTV. And third is goodwill. If people like us, they will spread the love here. So there's a lot of upsides, and there's even a last upside in pre-sale, because you can put more money in acquisition. So you can have it's funny because you can actually have a stronger marketing organization by having a stronger post-sales organization. Higher LTV allows you higher CAC.
Do you think that there's a direct correlation, or at least somewhat a correlation, between the money you can put at the top of funnel on the marketing to increase acquisition and the quality of the experience on that acquisition? Do you think you can increase the experience by increasing the budget?
Whoa! So I'm not the CMO, but I'll try to have an opinion on that.
Would that, if I was the CEO and I would ask you that this strategic decision, saying like, hey, like for the same number of leads, should I increase my CAC, right, my cost per acquired customer, to hope to increase the experience on the top of funnel? Because usually marketers are just trying to like lower the CAC. No,
right?
Which makes sense in high volume.
Yeah. Yeah, no, so the way we look at CAC is we look at LTV. So for instance, if I know that I have if I know that I have a high LTV for a segment of customers, so let's say, I don't know, groceries, for instance, I know that my LTV is what, 200,000. So I know that on the other side of the funnel, I can actually have a higher CAC, which allows me to have maybe more, one-to-one sort of events, like, I don't know, having, C-level dinners or this sort of stuff. So that, for me, that would be the only reason why I would increase the CAC, is if on the other side I can have a higher LTV.
Makes sense. Cool. So there's the thing you said a bit earlier on, like having the success org really helps you like increase the LTV, and they have all of those metrics on like land and expand. So like that feels very close to revenue. And my question is, are they financially motivated, incentivized to increase the LTV? Like salespeople, are your success people like financially incentivized to increase revenue?
So I think it's been a debate over
Which
the
is why
years.
it's good. I like debates.
I don't think any, I don't know if there's a company there that has, really figured it out. Cool. It's customer success is a tough function because you want to, so we've incentivized our CSMs on many things over the years. First was gross retention. So literally they had a retention, so a retention target. We would allow up to a certain percentage of churn and contraction on their portfolio. Then we did this plus a pipeline target. And the pipeline target was, so an expansion pipeline target. And that pipeline target was owned by the team, so not the individual, because it's different profiles that you have on the CSM team. They don't, not all of them, so it's a spectrum, but like in average, they don't have that sales mentality of, and also you don't want to bias. I'm not saying salespeople are bias a relationship, but you want to make sure that the relationship post sales and with the customer success is as honest, I would say, as possible. It has to be, everything has to be in the interest of the customer. So whenever and again, I'm not saying salespeople are being dishonest, but there's naturally a bias here. There's a vested in. No, so there's
I
okay.
love that topic because I have I'm a marketer, which means my job is to like balance performance and honesty, right?
Yep.
It's kind of my job.
Right.
I'm trying to balance both, right? And one of the things that I always advise CEOs on, and that I always try to tell them, is the marketing team, if they have the wrong metrics, the wrong KPIs, they are incentivized to push conversion problems down the funnel, okay, to the salespeople. And one example of that is overpromising. So if I was, at marketing on the demand gen side at Algolia, and my KPI was just like pipeline generated or worse, just leads and demos, then I'm going to put some wide promises on the top of funnel, my ads and whatnot, and I'd say, hey, like Algolia is free forever, your conversions are going to quadruple overnight.
Yep.
And obviously that's going to create more pipeline, and then somebody's going to have to tell them the truth, that it's not as good as what the marketing said, and then the conversion is going to drop, and I'm going to say, oh, not my problem, sales team's problems. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do you balance that? And which is like a combination of like enforcing the right message, having the right KPIs, so incentivizing the marketing team for the right thing. And that question is I think exists at all stages. It's true for marketing, which is what I know, so I can build it myself. But like there's also true on sales, and eventually somebody's got to pick it up, and usually it's the CS team.
So it's a bunch of things. Most specifically on the sales side, there's different mechanisms that you can use. Clawbacks being one. That's the most brutal one. Which is you close a deal, we pay you, again, so that's the beauty in SaaS, we pay you a year upfront of commission. But if a customer churns within that time period, we claw back what has been paid to you in advance. So let's say they churn 6 months in, we claw back half of your commission. People hate that.
The opposite of the for the US people, it's opposite of the tax check.
Yeah, exactly that. So the thing, clawbacks are really brutal, but it's a good, it's a good stick just to make sure that salespeople don't overpromise.
Yeah.
There's also, you can
have
also
clawback in marketing. Like if
yeah.
the pipeline generated disappear, I don't have a clawback on my bonus.
So on the marketing, so I'm going to tell you how we do that right now for our BD organization. So it's something that we started doing, I think, beginning of the year. And I think it was like Francois, the guy who put that in place. I think really smart idea. We pay BDRs based on pipeline generated. Okay, but we want to make sure that pipeline is quality pipeline. So the way we've protected ourselves on this is by actually having an accelerator or decelerator in the commission of the BDR, and you're getting decelerated if your pipeline you get close loss pipeline too quickly, or if it's disqualified by the AE, and you get accelerated, so there's a multiplier on your commission if that pipeline moves faster than other pipeline through the funnel. So you have like different mechanisms like that, especially around in the comp plans, that allow to ensure like quality all the way down the funnel. For the AEs, we've also experimented asking them a net retention target on their in their territory. So same thing, you're being asked to have like a net number in your territory. So there's nothing perfect, but you align. I mean, you drive behaviors like that.
It's for like salespeople. It's not for marketing, right? You don't have those adjusters for sales, right?
So for marketing, we don't have those adjusters for marketing. So marketing. So the only people who would get impacted by fake pipeline, I would say, or fake deals, would be our BD team, so outbound, and SDR as well, the AEs, and of course the CSM organization, if that ends up churning.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the crux of the challenge we see in two things. One, the relationship between marketing and sales, where like those incentives are disaligned, and there's like a bit of unfairness. It's like the marketing team is incentivized to create fake pipeline in some way. Obviously not really, but like in some way, right? Yeah. And there is and the rules are not fair. They're not the same. Like the marketing team isn't getting clawbacks, and they don't have those sticks, as you said, to course correct. And so like if I were to set up like an organization, like I have, I don't know, like maybe a 25-30% startup that's going really well, and I'm thinking through like how do I scale up my team, set up my team for success, and so what rules are put in place, what kinds of incentives are put in place, like how you do that today?
So that's tough. And I would like to hear your thoughts on this. like you. So the thing is, you paying on pipeline and calling back on pipeline is very hard, because pipeline can be faked. Again, like it's so you want to make sure you don't put the sticks at the pipeline level necessarily. I mean, it's tricky. Ultimately, you want people to be paid on revenue. There's two things. Yeah, I think one thing is like signups. Pretty much metrics you can't fake. So signups or MQLs, even MQLs you can fake it, depending on the scoring that you use. Mm-hmm. But like hardcore metrics, and ultimately the one that is at the very bottom of the funnel, the win, is the one that keeps everybody straight, I would say, and honest.
Totally.
What do you think? Like, you experimented that?
I would say so. Well, the past couple of years, I've been trying, and I've at some level of success, implementing a new metric, which is like, I take all the metrics of the marketing team, so obviously pipeline, but also signups and even traffic, and then we run some models that take into account the conversion rates, the value at that stage in the funnel per object. So whether it's the visit, whether it's the sign up, whether it's the deal, we run some lead scoring models. And to be transparent, we do them through MadKudu. We don't do them ourselves. And we then look at historically, what is the weighted value for that? What's the likelihood to convert? Yeah. And then we apply that multiplication factor, which obviously increases, gets closer to 1 as the deal goes down the pipeline, and eventually it is revenue. It's not perfect, but we at one company Advise, we land between like 90% and 110% every month. And you start having this magical thing when your pipeline stages for marketing. So you start having pipeline stages for marketing, which is not super common, but I love, because it really maps to the sales org. You can say, hey, marketing generated, maybe $1 million in future revenue at this stage of the funnel, maybe in leads, which will convert, in like some of it at 2 months, some of it at 6 months, some of it at 9 months, based on past historicals. And you can start seeing this machine where you can forecast with a high enough accuracy, exactly what's going to land on the sales team and how the sales team is going to convert it. When you have that, it really feels magical. It's predictable. You know where you're going. That's the best thing. And so the teams that I set up these days are incentivized on this weighted value, right? They're financially rewarded on that weighted value, and you can't really cheat on it because it takes into account a lead scoring model that looks at the account, the firmographics, the behaviors right now. And so like you would be hard pressed on like faking that, right? But it totally avoids issues of like, hey, I created a launch on Product Hunt and I got like 500 signups, but yeah, those are crap, man. Like nothing's going to come out of it, right? So it avoids.
You don't pay on realized revenue. It's on projected.
It depends on the companies.
Got it. Okay.
So some companies where the sales cycle is short enough.
Yeah.
Okay. When the sales cycle is less than 1 month, I will pay on a realized revenue. And so Gorgia is a good example of that. The sales cycle is like 15 days. Sure, no worries. Now, there's other companies where the sales cycles are going to be 3 months, 6 months. It gets harder because there's two things in a KPI. When you give a KPI to someone, an ownership of a KPI, there's financial rewards, which is important to motivate that person, but there's also visibility of performance of that person. And I could accept like paying that person like 3 months afterwards. The problem is that if that person doesn't know if the campaign succeeded or not within 3 months, like it just slows down all of the learning process. So you can't do that, right? So you need to transform leading indicators when you have a long sales cycle into a future weighted revenue.
Right.
Okay. And that works very well. But I think one of the wins that I have not covered is really the mental alignment at the executive level of having the same framework between marketing and sales, which is you have a weighted future revenue that flows down. And, obviously, just like in sales, like you don't close every deal, right? It's not how it works. And so you have the pipeline, which looks like a pipeline with like more at the top. You have more visits and leads and less at the bottom. But because we convert it in revenue, we say, hey, like our current efficiency right now, efficacy of converting is maybe like 20, 30%. We convert 30% of the total potential revenue we have at the top of funnel into pipeline. And then the sales team takes the pipeline and they maybe close like 30% of that, right? Yep. But it maps really well, right? And then I can say, hey, I passed $1 million to the sales team, right? Are they closing it? And the other thing I want to put on this one is each of the people on the marketing teams that I create own a channel, okay? And because they're incentivized on revenue, I have seen something fantastic. When their conversion rate drops, when their actual conversion rate, sales conversion rate drops, because they're incentivized on the revenue, they go talk to the salespeople. They go talk to the sales team, and they jump into the Slack, say, "Hey guys, like, why is my conversion rate from ads dropping?" Because like they know that bonus is at stake, and so they're talking to sales, and that's exactly the behavior I want. Having marketing people talk to sales to understand why is it dropping is great. Maybe there are good reasons. Like, the leads aren't as good as they used to be, and like maybe the message isn't great. Maybe there's bad reasons. Maybe the sales team don't want to work them, or like they have bigger logos to work and we need more people to work that channel. In both cases, having this forcing function to force the communication is probably one of the best outcomes.
Yeah. So one of the ways we're driving that right now is not as sophisticated as what you're describing, but again, we're running several plays in parallel, and each play is owned by a product marketer, by a PMM. And at the marketing level, we've set pipeline targets for the quarter for those plays. So, and every week we regroup with the PMMs, the DemGen, and the BD manager and look at the pipeline that has been generated. And what's pretty cool is that now we have a cadence where the PMM every week, every couple of weeks, really gathers the people from the field in the room, asks them, okay, what did you hear? Did our message resonate? What are the objections? And the whole idea is to really make the life of the field easier for the player that they own, so that eventually, that pipeline goes up. So it's a very first step towards what you described, but at least really aligning both teams on just one number. And again, there's, for you, the channel that, is owned by one person. Us, it's one play that is owned by one person. At least there's accountability there.
Yeah, I love it. And so I want to go back to something we said earlier, which is creating a great experience in the sales call. I mean, you were in charge of the sales team for a very long time, and or the revenue team, and so there's a challenge that many B2B SaaS technical companies have, technical products have, which is how to create the aha moment as you go up, let's say in the company sizes. How do you create in your initial demo the aha moment, like, oh yeah, this is exactly what we mean, this is great, even though like you probably can't use the product, like you haven't gone through like legal security compliance, they can't import data. Like if you think of Algolia, to realize the value with your own data, you need to send the data to Algolia and like create a search engine, right? And I guess some of it is possible sometimes, and some of it is not. Sometimes depending on the use case, right? And so I've seen that problem like elsewhere. So how do you do that?
Oh, we're lucky because actually, if they can't send us their records, their product, and everything, we crawl. So we just crawl, and what we've done in the past, we were pretty aggressive. We were, and especially in the early days, being very scrappy. We would, as part of our outbound, we would crawl their website, rebuild it, and send it. And just tell them, okay, we don't know you guys, you don't know us, but hey, we've rebuilt your entire front-end experience, and this is what that should look like. So that we almost created an aha moment. It was tricky because it's very ballsy to do that, but actually that triggered really, really good conversations. Like just because we were the thing that we were trying to replicate is that sense of they're very fast, they're very efficient because they don't even know us. Not only have they identified that we had a problem, but they've solved it, and they've solved it. They've shown that they can solve it even before talking to us. So we wanted to create a very high impact and very, very early on in the conversation. And that has been really key because again, like our premise is you can build a lot better stuff a lot quicker. So that's sort of like high impact that we have. And even when we get on the first call, the demo, and all of that, this is usually that aha moment where people realize, hey, we've been trying to do that for years. How do you guys do it?
So I like what you said about being able to crawl and create that experience. And I think it unfortunately for you, unfortunately for the rest of the market, not everyone can do that, right? But I think the principle works everywhere. If you think of like Drift, for example, so a live chat, right? You can't expect people to drop the JS and like boot up the live chat on their site if they're a large enough company to see how it works. It's just not going to happen, right? And one of the framework that I've built there is to identify. So one of the best, I'm going to take a small segue here. One of the best tools I recommend these days is a call recorder for the sales team, something like Gong or Chorus, right? And then running some extractions on that, you see like, what are the pushbacks? Like, can you make correlations between closed lost of qualified deals and some of the pushbacks? I did that, and we identified a few key pillars of pushback. And there was, if you think of live chat, there was like, I don't think that this is going to work better than our current forms. Okay, so there's a performance pushback or a lack of faith or trust. Okay, there's the design pushback. I don't think this is going to look good. All right, and then there's the pushback of like, oh, I don't think that you're the right size for us, or that you're too small. We're an enterprise company, and you're not going to support us. Okay, so which is I call the social proof pushback, and there's a couple of others. And so we identified those, and we said, okay, how can we change the mindset of the potential buyer before they get in the call, okay, about those things. How can we make them champions? And so we built tools. I had engineers on my team build tools to solve those problems. So if you look at the design pushback, we created what we call Drift Test Drive. You go to drift.com/test drive, you can enter your domain, and it's going to crawl your site, and it's going to inject a preview of Drift through an iframe on your website, and it's going to look at the colors, the logo, and it's going to extract the logo, the colors, and the wording to create a version of it that is as close to what we think you would be doing. And so then you can experience Drift on your own site without having to install anything, all right? And you can say, oh, well, it looks good. Well, we hope you believe it looks good, but at least you have a preview, okay? That's one. Second, the performance. Okay, so we did some analysis of all the forms, and we found the drop-off by number of fields on a form. We did a lot of crawling, and we started submitting demo requests at scale through crawlers and automation to monitor the response time of sales teams. And then we reach out to the VP of sales and say, oh, hey, Gaetan, we did a test, and your sales team responded in about 26, 28 hours.
So smart.
Do you know that if you brought that down to like 4 hours, you would double conversion rate? And we're not even talking about product. The important thing, we're not talking about the product. We're just saying like, hey, there's in your organization a challenge right now, and this is the challenge. And generally, people say, wow, super cool. Thank you very much. I'm on it. Right? But we're creating trust here. And we're telling them, here, this is the number of fields. If you reduce it, so we give them the insights. And then social proof, we do personalization, and we make sure that, especially for products like Algolia, segment drift that are very horizontal, like they apply to many different industries, it's important to be able to segment and say, hey, this company, this person probably fits into this bucket of like problems that we can solve or personas. And so we've got to use those social proofs, those relevant customers, those examples, and those use cases, those outcomes. Okay, and not just generic ones. And that's a problem that I see in many, many companies, is that companies that have a horizontal product tend to go for a message that works for everyone. And I tell them the conclusion is it works for no one. Like there's no good average between like a small startup that could use like the Algolia search and like Nike. There's no average between those two, right? So you shouldn't try to make an average. So like those are the three key things that I've been trying to implement with some success.
That's really cool. I'm gonna take back the test drive thing.
Yeah, the test drive, and I mean some of those things I've used and reused again and again. For example, if you could think at Segment, if you think of what's the blocker at Segment, it's creating a tracking plan. And people say, oh, I already have Google Analytics. I already have some events implemented there. True. And so what you should know is that those things are public on the website. Just like Algolia can crawl the product on the e-commerce site, you can crawl a site to find what are the events, the GA events, and say, hey, we've already found your tracking plan. It's there. We can import it. And so that logic which Algolia has, I think most high growth B2B companies have found a way to reduce the friction, the reasons for saying no at the top of the funnel. And so my recommendation to most of those companies is identify what are the friction points that are hard. And so is it like importing data to make the product valuable?
Yeah.
Is it, customizing the product for like help desk chats and whatnot? Is it like where was the friction to value, and reduce that as much as possible? I'll give you one last example. I used to work for a company in France called Mention.com, which is like a brand listener, a social listener. So for your brand, to know what people are saying about your company. And obviously you need to create queries to monitor the web about what people are saying. And that's a friction, right? And people never have the time. And when they do need it, when there's good PR, bad PR, they've got other stuff to do. So they don't do it too. Yeah. But that's when you need it. So what we did is that we created ways to monitor when those moments are happening, create the queries as good as possible for them automatically, and send them an account that is tokenized, that is good for 24 hours, that they can claim and say, hey, you know what, Gaetan, we created this for you. It's 24 hours, go for it. And with a screenshot of the app with the queries running live. So you had proof of value, and there was no friction. The way we did it that was super simple is we just monitored Product Hunt. We scraped all the new successful launches on Product Hunt, and then we would find the company. We use the Product Hunt data to create the query, and we just say, hey, congrats on a good launch. here's a way to monitor what people are saying about your company. Go ahead. It's free for 14 days. Just use it. No friction, proof of value. There's no reason why people wouldn't take it.
Oh, well, yeah. I love those golden hacks. Actually, they're not hacks, but they're really well designed. But yeah, proving the value with the lowest amount of friction.
Yeah. And it goes back to creating. If we go back to the topic of today, which is like the experience, it is about creating the experience. And for me, the experience is the subtraction of value minus friction. That's the experience. If the value is high, but the friction is very high, my experience might not be great. Right? Imagine if I had to go through 6 sprints of engineering to use Algolia and extract data, I'd say, oh yeah, I know it's going to reduce my search and it's going to improve my conversions. I just can't afford it. There's no way, right? I can't commit to that. And that's often something we hear in B2B products. Oh, I don't have the resources. That's the number one pushback. I don't have the resources. So how do you remove that thing, to increase your demo to close one?
So that's once after you close the deal, one thing that we track very closely is the time to go live. Because in our world, companies operate with sprints, so they typically have a couple of weeks, a few weeks. We have just that one window to make sure that we actually deliver the value that we promised. If we miss that window, I did
something recently for a small company that does a wiki product, and most wiki products there's it's a freemium model, but the problem is that there's a high friction. You need to enter data in a wiki, and that's extremely high friction. Once you're in, retention is great. And so the question is, how do you create incentives? And I told them, well, because those are what we call single user mode, it's the first user is generally not in organizations, just one person who wants to try it out. Give them the incentives to go over the friction. And so what we're doing is that we're giving them more free product if they do the things we know will create the activations. For example, invite somebody in, get a longer trial. And so there's ways to do that. I have another company where what I'm doing is that it's a paid product, and I'm saying we will not charge you for the first month if you invite 2 colleagues into the product. We'll not charge you at all, right? If you don't do it, we'll charge you, right? And so you can use the same logic in different ways, but the idea is the same.
I think it's really cool. I really love your definition of the experience being the value minus friction. I think that is really, really cool. Very strong, even especially for product team. I think I'm gonna take that one back too.
Awesome. I know we're almost at time. We only have 3 minutes left. So what's the what's your takeaway of today, Gaetan? What do you want the people to leave with?
I think humility is one of our values at the company. So I want to be honest here. I think when you scale very, very fast, don't forget about the people who help you scale, which are the customers, and really make sure that they're happy and they stay happy. So I would really, really advise folks who again watch this video to don't be cheap with the investment that you do on your customer base. Make sure they're happy. Make sure that they get the value that you sold, that you pitched when you sold to them. This is critical. Your customer base it's free marketing, it's free sales, it's almost free revenue. When you look at expansion. So I don't want to say that we missed that train, but I feel again, I think it's one of the curses of growing very, very, very fast, is that you become hungry for new customers. And so I would really advise people to have that balance. It won't be a waste of money, guaranteed. That pays off. That pays back with time.
Yeah, I love what you just said. My framework for that is try to reach to as close to $0 unit economic acquisitions, whereas most of the time, I'm a marketer here, so most of the time marketing teams at the scale of Algolia have a challenge that the CAC increases as you scale, because you've picked all the easy customers first, all the obvious champions. You've plucked those fruits, right? And then you go into the harder and harder ones as you go. And so your CAC increases, and that kills your model. Okay, and that's why companies are forced to go up market, because like it's got to support the rise to CAC, and like it's just a vicious cycle. You got to reach $0 unit economics on the acquisition, so trending towards zero as you scale.
Yeah.
And the obvious way to do that is to have the customers do the acquisition for you. That's what Gaetan just said. Like if the customers are doing the marketing and you're getting free marketing, if the customers are doing the referrals, if that variable effect, if that K factor is above 1, then you can reach scaling effects. It's the only way to reach scaling effects. Your marketing budget will never be enough. You'll never raise enough VC money to compensate rising CAC. It just goes up to the infinite.
100%. So I guess we have a question here. Variation of the volume request is outsourcing part of support a good idea.
Damien says, how about dealing with a variation of volume of requests? Is outsourcing a part of the support a good idea? Yes, if you outsource, can you keep the quality of the support?
Yeah, so the thing is outsourcing, there's crowdsource. You can also leverage your community. Like for instance, we have a discourse, domain where we have top Algolia promoters, or really people who are very, very strong with the product, who actually love to answer questions. So that's also one very, very key area. The community, we didn't talk about it that much, but there's community of very, very strong advocates that you can leverage also as part of this whole support realm. I'm not saying that you should outsource support to your community, but you can definitely leverage that. And then outsource support, I would say figure out support yourself first internally very, very well, and then outsource it. Was this, for instance, one thing, like actually it's a great question, because like I had this week, a guy reached out to me in support and told me, hey, we keep having questions about this integration that we don't have. What are your thoughts on this? I'm like, okay, then we need to dig here. If you outsource that piece, you won't get that intelligence.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think like, you really need to think about the NPS score at all stages of the funnel, and what experience you're giving and what insights you're taking from it. Obviously, community play. I mean, Gaetan, you wanted to realize how many companies are asking me how to create a strong developer community like Algolia, Twilio, or Segment. Like there are not many examples of like B2B companies that have succeeded there. Right? There are many who have tried. It's not many who have succeeded there. And so that's, that I think is part of the magic of Algolia.
Yeah, but you need to, my understanding, and I'm not saying I understand the community, and I think build great tech that will make people shine, that can help them with their day-to-day. So that's why the API economy is so great, because people can build very quickly, very great stuff. Make sure that your product is always top of the market in terms of quality. Make sure that your documentation is awesome, that things are very, very smooth for your people. But that's how, same thing as you said it yourself, value minus friction. Get great product and great resources, great documentation. They will have a great experience, and they will be your advocates.
Awesome.